Half a year after the breakup, Ryan had an accident and lost her memory. She was sent to me. I looked at this 1.68-meter tall little troublemaker and frowned, but she kept asking me foolishly and sweetly, "Are you my husband?" "Right." I forced a smile, gritted my teeth, and said, "I'm your father." As the end of the year approached, I was working overtime when I suddenly received a call from the hospital. They asked if I was a relative of Ryan. Ryan, my ex-girlfriend, the queen of jealousy. Hearing this, I coldly replied, "No, I don't know her then." I hung up the phone. But not 2 minutes later, the hospital called again. "Mr. G, the patient's phone indeed lists your number as dear husband. The patient sustained a head injury, and the condition is quite serious. If you find it inconvenient to come, could you contact someone else to sign the surgery consent form?" Ryan and I were together for 6 months, and before I had a chance to really understand her social circle, we broke up because she was just too jealous. I initiated the breakup. Now, where would I find someone to sign for her? After much hesitation, I gritted my teeth and decided to go to the hospital, because when we were together, aside from her jealousy, there was nothing else to complain about. A 100-point girlfriend. When I arrived at the hospital, Ryan was lying on a bed in the emergency room, her face covered in blood. The nurse told me Ryan had been brought in by a passerby. She was already covered in blood when she arrived. When asked questions, she hardly responded to anything. She wouldn't cooperate with the treatment either. That's why they called me. The nurse said Ryan had hit her head, and she needed a brain CT scan, but she was too uncooperative. She struggled, and they were afraid it would worsen her condition. So they waited for me to arrive. Hearing this, I walked over and glanced at Ryan. Her eyes were unfocused. Even when she saw me, she looked confused. Her gaze was completely different from the way she used to look at me. After we broke up, I refused to see Ryan again. So she would stand at a distance, watching me from afar. Her eyes were always full of love and passion. Not like they are now. "Ryan, do you still recognize me?" I asked Ryan. But Ryan still looked blank, obviously unable to recognize anyone. It seems she really hit her head badly. I murmured, "Don't worry, I'm here." The nurse briefly said to Ryan, "Miss Liu, your loved one is here now. Please cooperate with us and go for a checkup to assess your injuries." The nurse and I helped push Ryan to get the CT scan. Along the way, Ryan didn't speak, just kept looking at me, her eyes full of confusion. For the CT scan, Ryan was quite cooperative. Before long, the brain CT results came out. There was some bleeding, but the amount was small. As long as the bleeding doesn't continue, it can be absorbed on its own. No surgery is required. However, she needs to be hospitalized for a few days for observation. I gently persuaded Ryan, asking her to contact her family to take care of her. But Ryan always kept her eyes open, innocently looking at me. Her beautiful peach blossom eyes revealed a clear, foolish innocence. I couldn't get any answers out of her. Helpless, I could only take out her phone and search through it to see if I could find any useful information. First, I checked the contacts list. Ryan's phone, in the contacts list, had only saved my contact information ridiculously, just mine. I was speechless. No wonder the hospital only called me. I opened her call history, trying to call back a few numbers, but none were successful. People either thought I was a scammer, or they were just work-related contacts of Ryan, and it was impossible for them to come to the hospital to care for her. With no other choice, I opened Ryan's WeChat. As soon as I opened it, I saw my chat pinned to the top. Almost involuntarily, I clicked into it. Back when we broke up, I was firm and decisive, and directly deleted Ryan. In her WeChat, Ryan had sent me many messages. From her initial pleas and apologies, promising that she would control her jealousy, to later, it seemed like She had suddenly forgotten that we had broken up, asking me normally if I had eaten, wishing me good morning and good night, reminding me to dress warmly as the weather cooled, sharing with me what she ate for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, rambling on about many things. But next to every message was a red exclamation mark. For some reason, my eyes started to feel a bit warm as I read through them. Just then, Ryan, who was lying down, suddenly handed me a tissue. I looked at her, half-dazed, and accepted the tissue she handed over. As I was wiping the dampness from the corners of my eyes, I heard Ryan's dry voice, "Husband." "Don't cry," I yelled. "Who's your husband?" I glared fiercely at Ryan. "They all said you're my husband." Ryan looked at me innocently. "Husband, did I make you angry?" "I'm sorry." Ryan's head was still wrapped in bandages. She moved closer and gently tugged at the hem of my shirt, pleading, "Husband, don't be mad." Okay, I looked at Ryan's appeasing expression. My brow furrowed. I stared intently at her face and pressed, "Ryan, did you really lose your memory?" Right after the checkup, I asked the doctor why she seemed not to recognize me. The doctor said Ryan had suffered a blow to the back of her head, and there was some bleeding. So it's possible that she's experiencing temporary amnesia. Once the blood in her brain is absorbed, her memory should gradually return. Upon hearing this, Ryan grinned, showing her two neat rows of clean teeth, and said, "I haven't lost my memory. I remember you're my husband." I was at a loss, unable to ask anything more. So I gave up pressing her further. I planned to let things be until she remembered, and then we'd part ways. Since the new year was approaching, work at the company was hectic. I didn't have time to stay in the hospital to take care of Ryan, so I hired a caretaker for Ryan. That day, I had just finished working overtime and got home, showered, and was about to sleep when the caretaker called me. She said that Ryan had been hiding under the covers, crying quietly by herself these past few days. Every day, she asked if I would come to the hospital to see her. Lately, Ryan had been eating less and less. She had lost a lot of weight. The caretaker asked if I had time to visit Ryan tomorrow. She said that Ryan was generally obedient, but seeing her crying alone under the covers, it was quite heart-wrenching. That's why she called me. Hearing this, I felt a bit stifled inside. I checked the date and realized it had been 3 days since I last visited the hospital. "I'll be there shortly," I said, then hung up the phone. When I arrived, Ryan was curled up, her back facing me. As I walked closer, she looked so pitiful. I noticed she was looking out the window, wiping her tears quietly, like a little kitten that had been abandoned. When Ryan saw me, her eyes gradually lit up. She sat up and threw herself into my arms, sobbing, "I thought you didn't want me anymore. I've been quite busy lately." I explained briefly. Actually, I wasn't that busy. I just didn't know how to face Ryan. I still had feelings for her, but I was afraid that once she regained her memory, she would become jealous again, just like before. Even with normal interactions with the opposite sex, she would get jealous. I love her, but I love myself more. I don't want to change my lifestyle just to accommodate her. Please don't leave me. I'll be really good. Ryan said cautiously. Seeing her like this, I pressed my lips together, not giving a direct answer. Instead, I gently pried away the arms that were holding me. I opened the wontons I had just bought nearby and said, "I just got these wontons. Have some," as my words fell. I caught a glimpse of Ryan looking at her hands, which I had just pulled away. Her expression filled with loneliness, but she quickly perked up, trying to be obedient. I watched Ryan quietly eat the wontons and silently sighed. The end of the year was near, and I would soon be going home for the holidays. But Ryan showed no sign of regaining her memory. Taking her home with me was out of the question. Yet just leaving her at the hospital, I wasn't at ease either. I was lost in thought. When Ryan picked up a wonton, carefully holding it in front of me to eat, seeing her behave so differently from before. I involuntarily ate the wonton she offered. Seeing that I was willing to eat, Liu Ryan was overjoyed, her eyes sparkling. From the bowl of wontons, she fed me more than half of them. After finishing the wontons, while I was tidying up the bowls and chopsticks, I hesitated with my back to Liu Ryan, but eventually said, I'll be going home for a few days soon. You need to stay in the hospital and take care of yourself. After pausing for a moment, I added, if anything comes up, just give me a call. After saying that, I went to the bathroom to wash my hands, not daring to look back at Liu Ryan at all. I don't know why, but leaving her in the hospital like this, I felt increasingly uneasy. I couldn't bear to look at her disappointed yet still trying to stay optimistic to please me. When I came out, Liu Ryan was stuffing things into my bag. It was some candy, milk, and fruits. Seeing me come out, Liu Ryan raised a smile and said to me, so, when you go home, be careful on your way. If you get hungry on the road, you can eat these. I've tried this candy. It's so sweet. I stood there, staring blankly at Liu Ryan. When we were together before, whenever I was in a bad mood, I would eat candy to relieve stress. Liu Ryan wouldn't let me eat too much. She thought eating that much candy was unhealthy, but now she's telling me which candies taste good and how sweet they are. My eyes grew warm. I didn't say a word and just nodded slightly. When I picked up my bag and was about to leave, Liu Ryan hugged me gently from behind, resting her chin on my shoulder. In a deliberately cheerful tone, she said, "Happy New Year in advance." Her words hit my spine like a soft blow, and my eyes quickly filled with tears. I didn't even dare to turn around. I nodded firmly, then pried Liu Ryan's hands off and walked away without looking back. I was afraid that if I turned around, I would see Liu Ryan's face and my heart would soften. As soon as I got home, Liu Ryan's message arrived. She asked if I had made it home. I replied, "Yes, I'm home." Liu Ryan then rambled on about many things, mostly just reminding me to be safe when going home, saying things like greeting my parents on her behalf. I didn't reply again. That night, I slept very restlessly. I dreamt that I had left Liu Ryan alone in the hospital. On New Year's Eve, she was all by herself, cold and lonely in the hospital. Later, she tried to come find me, but something happened on the way. She got into a car accident. Once again, her face was covered in blood, but this time, she didn't make it through. She was covered with a white cloth and sent to the morgue. In the dream, I was crying desperately, calling out her name. Then I suddenly woke up. When I woke up, my back and forehead were drenched in cold sweat. The feeling of panic and my trembling hands left me disoriented for a long time. After a while, I felt the candy that Liu Ryan had stuffed into my bag earlier. I ate one piece of candy. After calming down, I picked up my phone to check the time. It was already daylight. It was 7 o'clock in the morning. I pulled open the curtains, and the sun was shining brightly outside. My train home was scheduled to leave at 9:48, so I got up, washed up a bit, grabbed the luggage I had packed earlier, and got ready to head home for the new year. On the way to the station, my mind was filled with thoughts of Liu Ryan. The first time we met was at a negotiation table. She was negotiating with my boss, and I was there as an assistant. The second time we met was at a charity gala. She shielded me from drinking too much. The third time was at an orphanage. We were both volunteers. That day, she asked for my phone number. After that, we started dating. Liu Ryan is 3 years older than me, so in life, she always arranged everything perfectly for me. During the time we were together, most of it was filled with happiness. Thinking of this, my steps began to slow down, but the crowd of people heading home pushed me toward the station entrance. "Honey, are you tired? Sit on my back." Liu Ryan squatted down on the train, offering me her back to sit on. A nearby aunt, who was also standing, saw this, looked at her husband, who was engrossed in his phone, then looked at the beautiful and considerate Liu Ryan. She angrily said to her husband, "Look at how attentive that young girl is to her boyfriend. And then look at you." Her husband glanced at his wife's 200-pound frame and dared not say a word. I must have been out of my mind. Just now, I was almost through the ticket gate. But I stopped abruptly, squeezed out of the crowd, went to the hospital to handle Liu Ryan's discharge procedures, and brought her home for the new year. Originally, my train ticket was at least for a second-class seat. Now, great, no seat, and I had to stand all the way home. I still didn't know how to explain to my parents why I suddenly brought a woman home for the 3.5-hour train ride. I barely paid attention to Liu Ryan. But Liu Ryan kept chirping away, asking if I wanted some water or if I needed something to eat. She even peeled a candy and popped it into my mouth. The candy spread a faint sweetness in my mouth. I watched Liu Ryan excitedly looking out the window and suddenly realized that in my rush, I forgot to make it clear to her that bringing Liu Ryan home was not because I wanted to get back together with her. It was simply because I couldn't bear the thought of leaving her alone in the hospital to spend New Year's by herself. That was all. But on the Spring Festival train, there were quite a few people without seats. Talking on the train certainly wasn't appropriate. I figured I'd wait until after we got off and explain it to her on the way home. But I didn't expect that. As soon as I got off the train, my dad's call came through. "Son, Dad is waiting for you at the exit." "Have you arrived?" my dad asked me. Originally, I was on the morning train, but because I went to pick up Liu Ryan, I changed to an afternoon ticket. I was afraid my parents would worry about why I was delayed so long. So I told them I had something to deal with and needed to change the ticket. Unexpectedly, my parents were so worried that my dad came straight to the station to pick me up. I looked at Liu Ryan beside me, panicked. What should I do? I hadn't had a chance to explain everything to her yet. My mind was in chaos, and I was just about to pull Liu Ryan aside to clarify things when my dad, with his sharp eyes, spotted me. He waved and called out to me. Liu Ryan enthusiastically waved back, and in a sweet, childlike voice, called out, "Dad." I was completely stunned. In the car on the way home, Liu Ryan sat in the front passenger seat. My dad was driving, and I was in the back seat. My dad had a serious expression, occasionally sneaking a glance at Liu Ryan. Every time Liu Ryan noticed, she would grin back at him. "So, son, how old is Miss Liu this year?" My dad tactically cleared his throat and said. I was just about to speak when I heard Liu Ryan humbly say, "Dad, just call me Ryan. I'm 25 this year." After saying that, Liu Ryan turned her head to look at me, her face full of confusion. It seemed like she was questioning why my dad was asking such things, as if wondering if my dad had also lost his memory. I silently held my forehead, feeling a headache coming on. Helplessly, I could only tell my dad, "I'll explain everything when we get home." What else could I say at that moment? Could I really say in front of Liu Ryan, "Don't mind her, she's got a head injury"? Once we got home, I asked Liu Ryan to stay in the car first. I pulled my dad to a corner to explain everything clearly. I honestly told him I dated Liu Ryan, but we broke up. Now she's lost her memory, and we can't find her family. Considering how good she was to me when we were dating, I couldn't bear to leave her alone in the hospital, so I brought her home. Nothing else is going on. Please don't misunderstand. A kind child just like me. Hearing this, my dad was moved to tears, patting my shoulder in approval. Back to the main point. I told my dad to explain things carefully to my mom later. For the past 2 years, my mom has been eager for me to find a partner and get married quickly. She's been subtly and not so subtly introducing me to multiple blind dates. If things weren't explained clearly, I was worried my mom might just drag Liu Ryan and me to the Civil Affairs Bureau to get married on the spot. My dad nodded, indicating that he would handle this. Then, when the two of us turned around, we saw my mom eagerly holding Liu Ryan's hand, asking her all sorts of questions. And Liu Ryan was obediently calling her mom, answering my mom's questions in detail. I looked bewildered. "Dad, when did mom come down?" I asked in shock. "Who knows?" My dad sighed and said to me, "I think even if it's not real, your mom is going to make her the real daughter-in-law." Anxiously, I rushed forward and called Mom. Seeing me approach, my mom pulled me in and quietly scolded, "You silly boy. She's already calling me Mom, and you're still stubbornly saying you don't have a girlfriend. Can't you learn to be as straightforward as your mom? Back when your dad and I..." "Stop, stop, stop," I quickly interrupted, trying to clearly. Just then, Liu Ryan came over. She was pushing her luggage and stood obediently beside me. At that moment, a neighbor happened to walk by, saw our whole family standing downstairs, and Liu Ryan standing next to me. Smiling, she said to my parents, "Oh, look, your son brought his girlfriend back." I was about to refute, but then I heard my mom, smiling, respond, "Yes, you should come by our house this evening." I widened my eyes, staring at my mom. Liu Ryan sweetly greeted the neighbor, calling her auntie. A deep sense of helplessness welled up inside me. "Liu Ryan, eat more," my mom said. Today was a bit rushed. I didn't have time to prepare some of your favorite dishes. Tomorrow, I'll have your uncle go to the market to buy some of your favorite foods. Auntie will cook for you. During dinner, my mom enthusiastically served food onto Liu Ryan's plate. Liu Ryan thanked her with every bite, while occasionally casting a confused look at me, as if wondering why my mom kept referring to herself as auntie. I kept my head down, shoveling food into my mouth, and didn't say a word. Earlier, when my mom was cooking, I had already explained everything to her, but my mom stubbornly refused to believe it. She even lectured me that a person shouldn't be reckless in relationships, that I had to be responsible and not abandon others halfway. She went on for nearly half an hour. My mom was firmly convinced that I was rejecting Liu Ryan because of her amnesia, and that I was trying to deny our past. So I gave up on explaining any further. After all, I'm only home for a week for the new year. Once we're back in Jincheng and Liu Ryan regains her memory, this will all be over. For now, I'd better just eat my meal. After dinner, Liu Ryan volunteered to do the dishes. I had been running around all day, exhausted to the bone and didn't want to deal with anything. I grabbed my clothes and went to take a shower. But when I finished my shower and returned to my room, I found Liu Ryan sitting upright on my bed, like a model student waiting for their homework to be checked. "Why are you in my room?" I asked, utterly baffled. "You silly child." My mom came over as soon as she heard my voice. Holding some clothes in her hands, she said to Liu Ryan, "These are my new clothes. I've washed them already. They're clean and never worn. You can make do with these for now. Tomorrow, let Boater take you shopping for new clothes." As my mom handed the clothes to Liu Ryan, she shot me a warning look, telling me not to be the kind of heartless man who starts things but doesn't finish them. Fine, I get it," I muttered, unable to argue back. Then my mom turned and pulled a quilt out of the wardrobe, saying to Liu Ryan, "You can sleep on the sofa tonight. My house only has 2 bedrooms, one for my parents and one for me." There wasn't an extra room for Liu Ryan to sleep in. It was definitely impossible for me to share a bed with Liu Ryan, so she had no choice but to sleep on the sofa. Liu Ryan was taken aback for a moment, a bit confused, but she obediently took the quilt and prepared to go to the sofa. Seeing this, my mom immediately grabbed the quilt from Liu Ryan's hands and stuffed it into mine. "You silly child. Liu Ryan just got discharged from the hospital, and you're letting her sleep on the sofa? What if she gets sick again?" I was speechless. Liu Ryan even tried to speak up for me, but I was so exhausted that I had no energy left to argue with my mom. Resigned, I took the quilt and went to sleep on the sofa. Well, who told me to let my sympathy get the better of me, bringing such a big trouble upon myself? After Liu Ryan finished her shower, My parents had already gone to bed. She squatted down next to the sofa and shyly, with a touch of caution, asked me, "Husband, why can't a husband and wife sleep together?" Ryan's voice was very pleasant, warm and soothing, and it startled me as it suddenly sounded in my half-asleep state. It sent a tingly shiver through me. I was startled too. I sat up, took off my eye mask, and looked at Ryan, who had an innocent look on her face. I decided to finally have a proper talk with her. I patted the spot next to me on the sofa and said to Ryan, "Sit down. I have something to explain to you." Hearing this, Ryan obediently sat down. She smelled faintly of shower gel. I looked at Ryan, who was both beautiful and well-behaved, wondering where to begin. Ryan, we were indeed together, but we broke up, and it's been half a year since then. I went to the hospital to see you, because your phone only had my contact saved, and I don't know your family or friends. So I was the only one who could help you sign the forms. Bringing you home was just because I felt sorry for you being alone in the hospital during the new year. Beyond that, there's nothing else. After I finished speaking, I paused, looking at the silent Ryan. I felt a strange pang of heartache. I pressed my lips together and asked her, "Do you understand what I'm saying?" Ryan paused for several seconds, then nodded slightly. Her eyes started to redden. She said to me, "I don't remember much, but I do remember that I love you. I don't know if the reason we broke up was because I mistreated you." Ryan cautiously took my hand and continued, "But if it was, you can hit me, scold me, do whatever you want to me. But could you give me one more chance? I promise that this time, I'll do it right. I'll do whatever you say." Ryan's hands were warm. I stared at her sincere expression and was momentarily stunned. It took me a while before I suddenly shook off Ryan's hand. I stood up, my heart pounding like a drum. I took several deep breaths, trying to calm myself down. I was actually moved. "Go back to sleep now. It's so late. I'm exhausted." After saying that, I pushed Ryan away and lay down on the sofa, pulling the blanket over my head, not daring to face Ryan. A few seconds of silence passed outside the blanket, and suddenly I was hugged tightly, blanket and all. I poked my head out, finding my face pressed against Ryan's. Our eyes met. "Ryan, what are you trying to do? This is my home." I lowered my voice and scolded Ryan. Ryan let go with a pitiful look, forcing a smile, and said, "I must have done something that made you really angry before, and that's why we broke up. I'll do my best to make it up to you." She gently patted my head and said to me, "Good night. Have sweet dreams." With that, Ryan really went to sleep. It took me a long while to come back to my senses. Ryan was indeed different from before. I was initially very tired, but I tossed and turned, unable to sleep. My mind was filled with memories of when I was dating Ryan. After lying there for more than an hour, the more I lay down, the more awake I became. Ryan was right. Husband and wife should sleep together. Ryan had just been discharged. What if something happens while she's asleep? I couldn't help but think back to the nightmare where Ryan's face was covered in blood. I suddenly sat up, threw off the blanket, got out of bed, and opened the door to the bedroom. I carefully walked to the bed and found that Ryan was not asleep. She was sitting on the bed, lost in thought. "I was worried about you," I said. "Let's sleep together." I walked over to Ryan, bent down, picked up the blanket, and placed it on the bed. Ryan grasped my wrist. In the dim light of the living room, she looked up at me slightly. For a moment, the corners of her lips curved, smiling as she looked at me. Seeing her smile, I quickly poured cold water on it, sternly saying, "Each of us stays on our own side. We draw a line in the middle, and no crossing the line." Ryan didn't mind my stern attitude at all. She stood up, took the blanket from my hands, and smiled, "I'll do whatever you say." After going back into the room, I used a scarf to mark the line. With each of us having our own blanket, I repeatedly warned Liu Ryan not to cross the line. Liu Ryan nodded obediently, and only then did I lie down with peace of mind. My bed wasn't actually that big, so we were quite close to each other. I closed my eyes, with the faint scent of Liu Ryan's shower gel lingering around my nose. For some reason, it made me feel oddly at ease. Sleepiness gradually crept over me, and I drifted off to sleep. In the morning, I woke up naturally from my body's internal clock. When I woke up, I was in Liu Ryan's embrace, with my arms and legs draped over her. No matter how you looked at it, it seemed like I had hugged Liu Ryan in my sleep. My face instantly flushed red. Carefully, I tried to move my arms and legs away, but Liu Ryan, still asleep, turned over, pulling me tightly into her arms. In a hoarse, sleepy voice, she murmured, "Be good. Just sleep a bit longer." Be good was the nickname she used to call me when we were dating, but only in private and during intimate moments. Something in my mind was slowly resetting to zero when my mom knocked on the door. "Time to get up soon. Today's New Year's Eve. You two need to come put up the couplets," my mom called from outside the door. Hearing that, my scalp tingled instantly. From what she said, my mom knew we slept together. I looked at Liu Ryan in horror, and she had just woken up too, our eyes meeting perfectly. Seeing me, Liu Ryan's lips curved into a small smile. "Good morning," she said. "I'm done for, I thought. Now even what's fake might become real." After Liu Ryan and I got up and washed up, my mom's sharp eyes scanned me a few times, but she didn't say anything, just looked like she already understood everything. Then she handed me the couplets, telling me to put them up with Liu Ryan. While putting up the couplets, Liu Ryan only let me stand beside her to check if they were straight. She didn't ask me to do anything else. After we finished putting up the couplets, Liu Ryan stood next to me, looking at the freshly decorated entrance. Liu Ryan turned to me and said, "Boater, I hope that in the years to come, we can put up couplets together every year." A simple, ordinary remark, yet it reminded me of the scene in the morning when I held her while sleeping. My face flushed, and I pretended to look stern as I walked back inside. After putting up the couplets, my mom was making dumplings, and my dad was in the kitchen prepping dishes. Liu Ryan went to the kitchen to help my dad, so I had no choice but to help my mom roll out the dumpling wrappers. At first, my mom didn't say anything, and I didn't dare make a sound. When the dumplings were almost done, my mom couldn't hold it in anymore. She couldn't resist and lightly tapped my head with her finger, saying, "You silly child, you really take after me entirely." Stubborn to the core, she didn't spell it out, but I knew she was talking about Liu Ryan and me. I snorted twice, stubbornly refusing to admit it. Seeing me like this, my mom didn't push me further. She wrapped the last dumpling in her hands, placed it neatly on the tray, and sighed, "I won't meddle in you young people's business. But Liu Ryan is a really good kid. I've lived for decades, and I've always been good at judging people. A person's eyes can't lie. In her eyes, it's all about you." My mom picked up the cover with a knowing smile. "It's clear you like her too. If both of you like each other, then don't waste time unnecessarily. Don't be like your dad and me, who were awkward for 6 whole years before finally getting together." After saying that, my mom went into the kitchen, leaving me standing there with flour all over my hands, stunned. Instinctively, I touched my face. Was it really that obvious that I liked Liu Ryan? Liu Ryan, who was helping in the kitchen, was sent out by my mom to watch TV. When she saw me spacing out, she paused for a moment, then chuckled softly. She pulled out the tissues and carefully wiped my face, teasing, "How did making dumplings turn you into such a little kitten?" I gazed at Liu Ryan's beautiful face, so close to mine. My face turned red as I realized she was teasing me, and I angrily grabbed the tissues to wipe my face myself. Seeing this, Liu Ryan took a piece of milk candy out of her pocket, unwrapped it, and popped it into my mouth. She said with a pleading tone, "Don't be mad, even if you're a little kitten. You're still the cuttest and handsomest one." The milk candy in my mouth tasted sweet. I pretended to glare at Liu Ryan angrily, but my heart began to soften. Maybe I should give her another chance. If she regains her memory and starts being jealous again, I can always break up with her then. During the New Year's Eve dinner, while the Spring Festival gala played on the TV and fireworks lit up the sky outside, I felt incredibly happy. My parents each took out 2 red envelopes, handing one to me and one to Liu Ryan. In the new year, we wish you both success at work and a harmonious and beautiful relationship, my parents said with warm smiles. Seeing that she also received a red envelope, Liu Ryan was pleasantly surprised. After respectfully accepting the red envelope, she took out 2 red envelopes of her own and handed them to my parents, saying, "Happy New Year, Uncle and Auntie. May you have good health and everything you wish for." My parents were stunned for a moment before accepting the envelopes, but at that moment of receiving them, they both looked visibly taken aback, staring at the obviously heavy envelopes. I frowned slightly and whispered to Liu Ryan, "Where did you get the money?" Since picking her up from the hospital, I had taken her straight to the train station. Liu Ryan hadn't brought anything with her. The new clothes Liu Ryan was wearing for New Year were bought this afternoon when I took her shopping. Where did she get so much cash from? Hearing my question, Liu Ryan also whispered to me, "When you took me to buy clothes this afternoon, I noticed a bank near your house, so I went out in the evening to withdraw some money." I frowned even deeper. Liu Ryan did go out briefly in the evening, but how did she know how to withdraw money? Seeing my frown, Liu Ryan said helplessly, "You can withdraw money without a card now." "Oda, I'm just amnesiac. I'm not stupid." There was a hint of affection in Liu Ryan's tone. We were sitting very close to each other, and as she spoke, her breath brushed against my ear, sending a shiver down my spine. My face flushed red again. I picked up a shrimp and placed it in her bowl, trying to mask my flustered feelings. "Let's eat." After dinner, my parents suggested I take Liu Ryan out for a walk. Around here, people are allowed to set off fireworks, so it's always lively during the New Year, especially on New Year's Eve night. When we got to the fireworks area, many people were already setting off fireworks. The dark night sky was lit up with colorful bursts of fireworks, making everyone feel cheerful. There were vendors selling fireworks by the roadside, and Liu Ryan ran over to buy a lot. "Come on, let's go over there to set them off." After buying the fireworks, Liu Ryan jogged over, took my hand, and pulled me along as she started running. I watched Liu Ryan as happy as a child, and didn't pull away, letting her hold my hand. Liu Ryan told me to stand far back, then set up the fireworks and lit them. She ran back to my side. The fireworks quickly shot up into the sky, blossoming into beautiful flowers against the night. My ears were filled with the sound of fireworks, and everywhere I looked was a dazzling display. Amidst this dreamy scene, Liu Ryan took my hand and I looked at her. She was looking at me too. "Boda, Happy New Year," she said. "May you have peace and safety, and may I be with you year after year." Liu Ryan handed me a New Year red envelope. It was actually very noisy at the scene, and Liu Ryan's voice wasn't loud, but I heard every word she said clearly. My heart beat synced with the rhythm of the fireworks. Looking at Liu Ryan, I decided to be brave for once. I reached out, pulled her into my arms, and leaned in close to her ear, whispering, "Okay." Liu Ryan, caught off guard, realized what was happening, and hugged me tightly, her voice full of sobs and overwhelming joy. She said, "Boda, I love you." After getting back together with Liu Ryan, I pretty much slept in every day. On the 4th day of the new year, my mom woke me up forcefully. "You silly boy, sleeping until noon every day." Look at Liu Ryan, she's up early every morning, going shopping with me, and accompanying your dad to the park to play chess. Can't you learn a thing or two from her? My mom grabbed my blanket and took it to the balcony to sun it, all the while muttering under her breath. I mumbled softly, "There are only exhausted oxen, never fields ruined by plowing. I've been so tired these days, really don't want to get up." But without the blanket, it's too cold, so I grudgingly got up. After washing up and having breakfast, my mom told me to go to the park to call Ryan and my dad back, and also to buy some fruits and snacks on the way. Tomorrow is the 5th day of the new year, welcoming the god of wealth, so we need offerings. When I reached the park where they played chess, I only saw my dad playing. Ryan was nowhere in sight. "Dad, where's Ryan?" I asked. "She went to buy those candied strawberries you like." Dad was about to win the chess game, too engrossed to pay attention to me, his eyes glued to the board. I had no choice but to look for Ryan myself. The candied fruit shop was not far from the park, so I decided to go straight there to find her. The warm sun was shining on me, making me feel lazy and sluggish. I walked leisurely, but when I got to the shop, I didn't see Ryan. I was about to call her to ask where she was when, out of the corner of my eye, I saw her across the street in a cafe. Ryan was sitting inside, looking down at some documents, her expression the same stern and serious one she used to have. Sitting across from her was her secretary, who seemed to be reporting work to her. My mind buzzed, and a sudden thought exploded in my head. Almost instinctively, I walked into the cafe. I sat down in a booth not far from Ryan and her secretary. Ryan's secretary was indeed reporting work to her, and every work directive Ryan gave afterward was clear and well organized, exactly matching her previous decisive and efficient style. As I listened to their conversation, the more I heard, the colder my hands and feet became. The thought in my mind was becoming increasingly obvious, but I still couldn't bring myself to believe it. Until President Liu, how's your injury? After finishing the work report, Ryan's secretary conveyed the shareholders and employees' concerns for her. "It's nothing serious now. I'll start working after the new year. Thank you all for your hard work during this time." Ryan's tone was calm. Hearing this, my mind went blank with a loud bang. My thoughts were scattered. "All right, I'll take my leave now." Ryan's secretary stood up, gathered the documents, and prepared to leave. As she was leaving, Ryan's secretary noticed me and respectfully greeted Mr. G. Hearing her voice, Ryan abruptly stood up from her seat, so hastily that she even knocked over her coffee. Ryan quickly came to my side, and upon seeing me, the originally stern expression on her face turned to panic. Ryan tried to take my hand, but I pulled away, with a smile on my face. I calmly said, "You guys go ahead. I'm leaving." Saying that, I walked away without looking back. Ryan followed closely behind. She tried multiple times to grab my hand, wanting to explain, but I shook her off again and again. My hands and feet were numb, and my mind was completely blank. I didn't dare think too deeply whether Ryan had truly lost her memory or not, or why she would deceive me. All I felt was shock and confusion. Ryan couldn't stop me, and in the end, with no other choice, she hugged me tightly, begging me to listen to her explanation. I looked at Ryan as she anxiously tried to explain, but all I saw was her mouth opening and closing, a loud ringing in my ears. Unable to hear anything, Ryan does deceiving me give you a sense of accomplishment? I stared at Ryan, tears uncontrollably streaming down my face. Hearing this, Ryan opened her mouth but had nothing to say. She wanted to speak, but didn't know how to defend herself. Even the hands gripping my arms began to tremble. "If you did this to get back at me for how cold and resolute I was when we broke up, then congratulations, you succeeded." I forcefully broke free from Ryan's grip, straightened my back, and walked away without looking back. I warned Ryan not to come to my house again, or I would tear apart all the goodwill she had built with my parents. By the time I got home, I was already completely exhausted. It felt like I had used up all my strength. and I collapsed onto the sofa, staring blankly when my mom saw me sitting dazed on the sofa right after coming home, empty-handed. And without Liu Ryan or my dad, she started nagging at me. She nagged for a while, but realized I wasn't responding at all, not even focusing my gaze. She stopped and said, "Boda, what's wrong with you?" My mom looked at me with worrying. After a while, I looked at her with a dazed expression, forcing a smile and asked Mom, "You mentioned setting me up for a blind date before the new year. Is that still an option? I think I want to settle down now." My mom assumed I had fought with Liu Ryan, so she thought my talk about wanting a blind date was just me being upset. She even tried to persuade me to talk things through with Liu Ryan. Liu Ryan doesn't remember anything now, and she's unfamiliar with everything around here. What if something happens to her? I didn't respond directly. Instead, I hid in my room and didn't come out. The next morning, my mom started asking again about where Liu Ryan had gone. I really didn't want to hear Liu Ryan's name anymore, so I made plans to meet up with my best friend from high school, Shen, to get away. As I was leaving, I saw Liu Ryan waiting downstairs by my building. She probably hadn't slept all night. Her eyes were bloodshot, and she looked utterly exhausted and worn out. I walked straight ahead without glancing at her, passing her by without a second look, then hailed a taxi and left. I thought I could chat with Shen and relieve some stress, but unexpectedly, Shen had brought his sister along. Even more unexpectedly, he took a phone call that lasted nearly half an hour, leaving me and his sister awkwardly facing each other. "I heard from my brother that you're working in Jincheng now. I'm also in Jincheng. Let's add each other on WeChat, and we can look out for each other if anything comes up," Shen Cheng's sister, Shen Youwei, suggested proactively. Shen Youwei had always been gentle before, but after a few years, she had become even more gentle and considerate. I had actually seen her often in the past, but meeting her again after a few years, she felt quite unfamiliar. I felt a bit awkward, but since she had proactively suggested adding me on WeChat, it didn't feel right to refuse. So we added each other on WeChat. Just after we finished adding each other, my buddy returned. He noticed that his sister and I had exchanged WeChat contacts and jokingly said, "Wow, sis, you, who've always been like a steadfast iron tree, actually took the initiative to add a guy's WeChat?" Well, that's something new hearing this. Shen Yui's ears turned red. She cleared her throat and quickly changed the subject. "The streets are bustling today. Come on, let's go take a look." The streets were indeed lively, with vendors selling cotton candy, sugar figures, and all sorts of snacks. There were ring toss games, dart balloons, and more. It was full of childhood memories. So my buddy and I went wild playing around, while Shen Youwei followed behind us, carrying our jackets, bags, and snacks. We spent the whole day playing, and after dinner, we watched a comedy movie, then found a barbecue stall for a late-night snack, beer and skewers, and before we knew it, my buddy and I had both drunk too much. The two of us huddled together, showing each other pictures of pretty girls on our phones. "Not this one. The pecs aren't prominent enough," my buddy said dismissively after glancing at my phone. "Dude, check out mine. Wait, let me find it. The body, the looks." TSK, he was saying as he was about to open his phone, but Shen Youwei quickly stopped him. She looked at us with a pained expression. After paying the bill for the two drunkards, she got us into the car to take us home. Shen Youwei originally intended to put us both in the back seat, but my buddy lay down as soon as he got in, so she had no choice but to let me sit in the front passenger seat. I often attend social events, so my alcohol tolerance is a bit better than my buddy's. I wasn't as drunk as him, but it wasn't far off. My buddy fell asleep, and Shen Youwei focused on driving, so the car was very quiet for a while. She then turned on some music. The music was a soft, lyrical tune. Listening to it, tears started to fall uncontrollably from my eyes. I turned my face towards the window, But Shen Youwei quickly noticed I was crying. At the next red light, she took out a few tissues and handed them to me. She didn't say much, just murmured as if talking to herself. If you feel bad, just let yourself cry it out. You'll feel better afterward. I didn't respond. Just took the tissues and wiped my tears. But the tears were like a broken faucet. The more I cried, the more they flowed. In the end, I simply covered my face with the tissues and let myself have a good, long cry. I had actually wanted to cry last night, but couldn't. Today, after drinking, the emotions found an outlet, and I finally cried. Shen Youwei didn't disturb me. When we arrived at my place, she parked the car and quietly waited for me to finish crying. I cried until my temples throbbed with pain, and only then did I gradually stop. I checked the time. It was already past 1 a.m. Feeling a bit embarrassed, I apologized to Shen Youwei. I grabbed my coat and prepared to get out of the car. Shen Youwei wanted to walk me upstairs, but my buddy in the back seat suddenly woke up as well. He stumbled out of the car, clinging to me and saying he wanted to go drinking again. You should take your brother home first, I said. It's really late. I'm sorry about this. I apologized to Shen Youwei. Shen Youwei initially insisted on walking me up for safety, but with my buddy starting to act drunk and unruly, she had no choice but to stay downstairs and look after him. She watched me as I headed upstairs, asking me to text her when I got home, so she'd know before she left, not wanting her to wait too long. I texted her as soon as I got into the elevator. Shen Youwei replied almost immediately, okay? Get some rest, good night. I glanced at her message, then locked my phone and put it away. As I stepped out of the elevator, the hallway lights came on, and I saw Youwei crouched near my apartment door. Seeing me return, she visibly breathed a sigh of relief. She immediately stood up, but perhaps because she had been crouching for too long, she staggered slightly as she got up. I ignored her, took out my keys, and tried to unlock the door to go inside. Just give me 5 minutes. I said, if you want to hit or scold me, I'll take it. Just 5 minutes. I'm begging you, Youwei pleaded. I looked at her with a blank expression, then took out my phone and started a countdown. Seeing me relent a bit, Youwei looked relieved and began to explain. I really did have a brief period of amnesia after my injury. When I first saw you in the emergency room, I truly didn't remember. But after the checkup, I regained my memory. When I saw that you were willing to see me again because of my injury, I didn't mention that my memory had returned. I was greedy for the time I got to spend with you. I kept thinking, I'll tell you next time, and then the next time. Boda, I swear to the heavens, I never intended to get back at you. You were the first person I met whom I wanted to spend my life with. I know I was too controlling before. I shouldn't have been so jealous. You have every right to interact normally with the opposite sex. I've deeply reflected on this. I'm sorry, Boda. Youwei rambled on, tears welling in her eyes as she spoke, her hands trembling slightly. I looked at her, my expression unusually calm. When I first discovered that Youwei had deceived me, I was furious and shocked. But now I felt calm. It's hard to describe what I was feeling, but I definitely didn't want to see her at that moment. Soon, the 5 minutes were up. I took out my keys and opened the door. As I was about to enter, I felt Youwei break down a little. When I closed the door, I thought I heard the sound of something falling to the ground. I quickly tittied myself up, but as I was about to head to my room, I stopped in my tracks. I rushed back to the door and found Youwei had already fainted outside, lying on the ground. Her body was burning up, and her face was pale. I tried to wake her, but Youwei didn't respond at all. Panicking, I lifted her up and dialed for emergency services. The doctor said Youwei had caught a cold and developed a high fever, combined with low blood sugar. That's why she fainted. It wasn't anything serious, but she needs to take good care of herself to fully recover. After all, she recently had a brain hemorrhage. Since it wasn't serious, I told my parents to go home first. I could stay with her by myself. Not long after my parents left, Liu Ryan woke up. When she woke, Liu Ryan reached out and squeezed my hand. And after confirming I was really there, she managed a small smile. Liu Ryan struggled to sit up, but she didn't let go of my hand. I tried to pull my hand away, but couldn't. Call your secretary to come pick you up. I tossed my phone onto Liu Ryan, my expression blank. The phone slipped from my grasp, and it landed hard on Liu Ryan's chest. Liu Ryan clutched her chest where the phone hit, gasping softly in pain. Her face paled a little. I actually regretted throwing the phone the moment I did it, but I kept quiet out of pride. After adjusting her breathing a few times, Liu Ryan apologized. "I'm sorry. Did I scare you?" Hearing that, my eyes instantly felt warm. I turned my face to the side, avoiding looking at Liu Ryan. "I really didn't mean to deceive you. I know I was wrong. I won't lie to you again, I swear." Liu Ryan gently tugged at my hand, sincerely making her vow. "I know you're angry. If I were in your place, I'd be angry too. So you can punish me for a while. See how I act, and then decide whether to forgive me or not. But can you please not ignore me?" Liu Ryan spoke cautiously. I turned to look at Liu Ryan. The person she was now, humble and careful, was completely different from the confident, spirited woman I first met. I lowered my eyes slightly and sighed. "Liu Ryan, with your qualities, you could have any man you want. Why do this to yourself?" Liu Ryan was what people would now call a high-quality woman. Wealthy, socially influential, with a great figure and good looks, and she was loyal. Her only flaw was perhaps her jealousy. "But that's not you." Liu Ryan's eyes turned red, and her voice faltered. I didn't respond to her directly, and instead said, "If you don't want your secretary to pick you up, then call your parents or a friend. I really don't want to see you for a while. I genuinely need some peace." Hearing this, Liu Ryan paused, then softly said, "I'm an orphan. I don't have many friends either. Boulder, I'm actually quite lonely. I don't really know how to love someone. You were my first relationship, so when I was with you, all I wanted was to keep you hidden away, just for myself." At this point, Liu Ryan worried that she might frighten me, so she quickly added, "But believe me, I really realized that was wrong. I've changed now. I won't interfere with your social interactions anymore." I'm sorry. Hearing this, I was stunned. So that was why Liu Ryan never mentioned her family and never introduced me to her parents. It was because of this. I instinctively tightened my grip on her hand. My heart ached as if it were being squeezed. I pressed my lips together, unsure of what to say. Finally, I picked up a bowl of porridge from the bedside table. I lowered my head, removed the outer packaging, and placed it in front of Liu Ryan. "Have some porridge," I said. "Let's not dwell on the past." Liu Ryan and I didn't get back together, but we also didn't remain distant. There was a subtle tension between us. On the evening of the 7th day of the new year, I received a message from Shen Youwei. She said she'd be driving back to Jincheng tomorrow afternoon and asked if I wanted to ride with her. I politely declined, because my buddy had mentioned she seemed to have feelings for me. I still liked Liu Ryan, but I wanted to take things slow for now. So I definitely couldn't engage further with Shen Youwei, knowing she might have feelings for me. It wouldn't be fair to anyone involved. But Shen Youwei was perceptive. After my repeated refusals, she caught on to my intentions. She directly asked me out for a meal. After some hesitation, I agreed to meet her. Coincidentally, Liu Ryan had also invited me out for dinner. I didn't directly agree to Liu Ryan. I knew today was her birthday, but I didn't want to delay resolving things with Shen Youwei. After dinner, Shen Youwei handed me a gift box. Inside was a watch. I politely pushed the box back to her and said, "Youwei, it's getting late. I should get going. My girlfriend is waiting for me at home." Upon hearing this, Shen Youwei was momentarily taken aback. It was during the New Year's that I had met her family. I gave a polite smile. Rising from my seat, I said, "Well, I'll be going now." After Shen Youwei came back to his senses, he also stood up and said, "I'll see you off." "No need," I replied. "He's waiting for me outside." As I spoke, I pointed towards the window outside. A tall woman immediately pulled her baseball cap down lower, then averted her gaze and pretended to look at the sky. Shen Youwei understood immediately. He smiled and said, "Enjoy your happiness. Remember to send me an invitation when you get married. Best wishes for your wedding." I flashed a relaxed smile. Before leaving, I settled the bill for the meal. As I stepped out of the restaurant, I saw Youwei pressing her face against the restaurant glass, searching for me. I raised an eyebrow. I quietly walked over, and then, neither too softly nor too loudly, called out, "Youwei." Upon hearing my voice, Youwei's back stiffened. She then quietly adjusted the mask on her face and pulled down her hat. She pretended to walk by, keeping her head down and trying to leave. Seeing this, I was both amused and exasperated. "If you leave, I'll give your birthday gift to someone else." I made a little noise of discontent. I threatened, "He can't openly be jealous right now, so he's secretly sulking." "Is that so? Then I'll deal with him." "Oh, I spent so long picking out this gift." Feigning regret, I started to turn away. Just a few steps later, someone grabbed my hand. Youwei looked at me with a pitiful expression and said, "You haven't forgotten my birthday, have you?" I looked up at Youwei. She had already removed her mask and hat. We were standing right under a street lamp. The warm yellow light of the lamp illuminated her. She looked at me against the light. Her eyes were full of tenderness. I took a step closer, gently embracing her. In her ear, I whispered, "I haven't forgotten, and I never will." What responded to me were the soft, fragrant lips of Youwei. The full text is completed.